Well, hello, and welcome to Get Fuck Me.
I got straight away, sorry. Leave that in. Leave that all in.
Uh, well, hello, and welcome to Opal City Confidential, a Starman podcast, episode 62. And Dave Steele from the Earth-2 Podast is here. We're going to talk about our favorite bad guy in Opal City, The Shade, and his four-part miniseries from 1997. Say hi, Dave.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. It's good to be here. I always say this. It's always so long between our chats. And as usual, Ross and I have spent an hour plus catching up on everything crazy that's happened in the world since the last time we spoke. And
that was a lot.
Yeah, and we haven't actually finished talking about Doctor Who, but we'll probably do that after we stop recording.
Yeah.
Anyway, Shade miniseries, fantastic.
Okay. You have memories of it as issues, getting it as issues. Is this part of your big catch up? You had gotten them all and you hadn't read it, and you.
Yep, that's it exactly. I was. I think the first issue new that I bought off the stand was issue 3, because obviously that had Jay on the cover.
Yeah.
And I got issue 4 when it was released, because as I've said in the past many times, I'd left my job at the bank tail end of March '97. Didn't start doing anything else for a couple of months, so caught up in a lot of the comic book reading I hadn't been doing for a couple of years. So I was reading the Starman, I was reading Green Lantern, Ron Mars and Darrow's brilliant Kyle Rayner stuff, which I believe is being collected in a compendium.
It is. I have one living on my shelf, waiting for that itch to be scratched.
I'll probably grab that at some point myself.
It has a lot of the ancillary stuff too.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Really, it's well worth the price.
I remember catching up on Power of Shazam and Starman Mystery Theater, but also just mind-blowing reading Starman for the first time. And the Shade miniseries, the issue that I think the first issue sort of new on the stands after I'd started reading it was, I think, maybe just actually where you're up to at the moment in your coverage. So we've probably caught up to the point where I started reading it. But I had like 2.5 years worth to read. And the Shade series had started. I'd seen issue 1 and 2 on the shelf in Forbidden Planet.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really pay any mind to it. I just kind of thought, right, okay, yeah, the Shade, it's a spin-off from Starman, but I'm not reading that. But then I started reading it and I was like, oh, wow, the Shade's terrific. So I remember grabbing issue 3 and issue 4, and FP still having a few copies of issue 1 on the shelf, but they didn't have issue 2. But then there was a Comic Mart. I've got a feeling it must have been about, now if I checked my 1997 Twitter account, I probably could have worked this out. I think it must have been about early May 90, well, maybe not, middle of May 1997, I think, or maybe early June, something like that. And it was a Comic Mart where I got a couple of 100-page issues of House of Mystery and a couple of Doctor Who jigsaws, and someone at the Mart was selling issue 2 of The Shade. They had it for sale, so that's when I grabbed it. And I can remember being really relieved and pleased that I'd be able to read the whole thing, because, say, FP had sold out of issue 2, because this is often the case. Comic shops, we all know this, they buy quite a few copies of issue 1, but they generally cut their orders for issue 2 because a lot of people don't come back. But I remember reading it alongside my catch up with the main series and just being blown away by just the quality of it, especially obviously enjoying issue 3, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, I think I didn't read it until I got the omnibus.
Wow.
So I've only read it 3 times, and twice of those, because we've had to postpone this recording. I've had to read it twice because it's been like a month trying to get this thing lined up.
I know.
And as I've been saying on the podcast, is because I'm not reading ahead.
Yeah.
There's a lot of freshness to what I'm reading, because it has been 10 year maybe since I've reread it. And like when we get to him going to space, I've only read that maybe once or twice.
Wow. So I reread, when I reread the whole of Jack's book during COVID. I mean, that's coming up for 3 years now, so a while. And I remember when I was reading the space issues, I was like, yeah, I read some of these a lot. I was rereading each issue, like, I must have read it a good 6 or 7 times before the next one was coming out. And the stuff in the final sequences, I wasn't quite as familiar. I seem to remember I let it build up a a couple of months at a time just so I could, binge on it, as we would say nowadays. But
Yeah.
no,
It's
I
nice
think,
to read a comic though that takes some time to read it.
yeah. So I mean, that's the thing we keep saying. It's so it's. I remember reading this. I remember very clearly reading the space issues a couple of years ago and just being impressed, even as late as 98, 99, 2000, just how undecompressed it was. How much James was packing into each issue, and it's that's why the whole thing is just such an absolute feast.
It is because you get like this is we've seen the shade that he is more than we've always that any of us thought because
Yeah.
all of this the good stuff about the shade is laid down by Robinson.
Oh yeah, because
It is all from James Robinson, but he was just an erudite, snobbish kind of villain. And he
yeah,
was a good villain. He was but he was this type.
there's very it's very interesting reading and comparing the shade who appears in issue 123 of the Flash, and there's two characters called the Shade that appear in the Golden Age, one in a Jay Garrick story, one in a vigilante story. Peter and I are planning to do both of them eventually. We'll do them one episode or back to back because they're both quite long. Peter will probably want to do them separately because it'll save him editing, but don't tell him that. Hi Peter, if you're listening. But the Shades, like a lot of Golden Age characters, are pretty much a blank slate. The character who appears in Flash 123, the tall hat and the cane and the powers of night and the dark force stuff that you can conjure and do stuff with, comes back in issue 151 a couple of years later. He is nothing like the Golden Age character that appears.
Richard Stark. We have a name for him now. Richard Stark.
Yeah.
Is that his name? I don't,
He I think Gardner Fox basically created a brand new character, with the same name when he brought him back in Flash of Two Worlds. And because that version kind of hung about, he pops up again in one of the other JLA JC team ups. He gets a couple of issues of the Barry Allen Flash run about issue 3, round about issue 300, just before it, I think. And then he doesn't appear in Crisis on Infinite Earths at all. And then
I never read that.
He's James utilizes him in Starman to amazing effect and really kind of builds on the visual sort of side that Carmine and Gardner sort of gave him, but just takes it to such another level. And it's and this miniseries, and obviously the other 12 issue series that
which I've never read.
Yeah, that came out in the New 52 era. Which I think we're probably roughly now. We're not too far away from now. It's maybe a year or two out still, but we're about roughly as far away from that New 52 era 12 issue Shade series as that was from this miniseries. Really, maybe a year or two out. Either, yeah, it was, and it's if you haven't read it, I shall say no more. But you're in for a treat. It really is. It's
everybody I know who's read it, and I've looked through it, and I go like, every issue is a different. I mean, they're different creators on it, so you get a different feel, kind of like this one is.
Yes.
And now I want to talk about that. So my 2 cents on Shade is that I've always thought when I was a little kid and I read those Flash comics, I kind of went, he's a bad guy. He's not, because there's some bad guys. You're like, come on, the Kite Man.
Yeah.
And the little kid goes, what? Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the real weird ones. But he was it's like Russell Davies talking about Christopher Eccleston. It's all about the silhouette. When they were costuming him, you wanted to know who the character was if he had his back to you.
Yeah.
In darkness, you need to know. So, and that's kind of when you design a superhero, you kind of want that. And I think he's a great design, and especially Carmine's, because I mean, I later Carmine, not a big fan of.
Sure, agreed.
But his early Flash stuff, chef kiss, and his Golden Age stuff is amazing. And it's dynamic. He's a great flashy character. But what I liked reading Starman when I first read it was that the thought of everybody's a hero in their own story. Yes, I'm a villain when I want to test my wits against a superhero. Why would I test them against a villain? They're all, you know what I mean? He's a snob. But at his home and for the right reason, he will do good. He will be selfish and do things for profit. He will do things to entertain himself with his superpowers, but he will whoop out some retribution, either for himself or for others. And that he is such there's a thing he knows scalp hunter, and him and Matt become friends, and all that has started. But this
yeah,
is like Robinson and these four artists just going, these are the four, this is why the Shade's the way he is.
yeah. It
Uh,
really,
really fleshes him out, and he'd
yeah,
already become pretty meaty.
yeah. I mean, so much is done with him in the regular Starman series, obviously because he narrates the times past issues that he's featured in, and we have the device of Jack reading his thoughts in his journal and text pages at the back of the comics. So, if you're, I would read them sometimes. Sometimes I wouldn't. I've read them all now. I've read them all at some point. And they do a thing of just, almost subliminally just sort of mapping out a bit more from him and, filling out his whole history and dropping hints here and there. And
Creates a
I think
voice for him too.
I was always struck by how he reminded me visually of the child catcher from the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang movie. So
Yeah, tall version of him. Yeah,
yeah,
the elongated version of him.
I've always found the Shade to be quite scary from that point of view. You soften initially. I mean, because I remember seeing Chitty Chitty Bang Bang on television as a really young kid, and whoa,
Yeah, yeah. That it.
um,
I'm a little older than you, and I remember I saw it at, like, when it came out, and it was like, that's the creepiest thing I've ever seen on that. Up to a point, that was the creepiest thing I'd ever seen on
yeah,
television, and
I
it is
remember.
still creepy. It is.
Oh yeah,
That's not the greatest movie in the world, but it's a pretty good kids movie, and the sequences in the village in that part of the story really good.
yeah, yeah. I should revisit it one of these days. But you're right. I mean, so much. I think I've said in the past that the three main characters in this book are Jack, the Shade, and Opal itself. And the Shade is, there's points when he but he never quite does it. Almost threatens to, overshadow, if you pardon the pun, what Jack is doing. I mean, and without spoiling stuff about what's in the future, so much of what happens in the last arc of the book is all about the Shade. But we'll get there.
Yeah, yeah, because Jack's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with issue one. We're going to do these pretty quick and then do an overview, folks. Hold on. Let me. Whoop. Nope. Not
Yep.
time to close. Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah.
Can't find my Mike's Amazing World and Phantom Wiki. So Shade number one came out February 12th, 1997. It was edited by Chuck Kim. Was Archie dead? Had Archie passed by this point?
I'm not sure.
Oh, that's sad. That's the first. Well, maybe he just did the miniseries because he's been doing the Starmans that are past this.
Yeah, I mean, look at the back of the comic. Archie's still credited as group editor. Chuck
Okay.
is just
All
Chuck's
right.
assistant editor.
Chuck just got a promotion. I ain't gonna begrudge him
So.
a
Well
promotion.
done, Chuck. Hi, Chuck. If you're listening, hopefully you'll come on and talk to Ross at some point. Haha.
Oh God, I'd love to talk to somebody who worked on this. I love that. But this is just called. It's a 4-issue miniseries. This issue is by James Robinson. Pencils, inks, colors by Gene Ha. Letters by Chris Polopus. I cannot pronounce his name, but he is one of the great letterers. And Chuck. Yep. We get to meet the Ludlow family. And this is there isn't really a synopsis in either thing, and I don't really think we need to talk about it. It starts with one. What did you think of the Gene Ha? Almost black, white, and red art.
I think it's some of the best creative work I've ever seen in my entire life. Genuinely, I'm looking back at it again. I'm just sort of stunned. There's a photorealistic side to the people that he draws, but there's always such deep texture and richness to the backgrounds and the surrounds. The expressions that he draws on people's faces are unmatched. I've often sort of said to myself, why haven't I sought out everything he's ever done ever? Because he's a genius. He does a couple of other stories in the main Starman sort of oeuvre. There's a couple of other times past that we'll talk about when we do the next annual and all that sort of stuff. It's wonderful. I mean, I could look at it.
You never read Top 10?
Say again?
You've never read Top?
Yeah. I've read some of it. I remember thinking I liked the art, but I wasn't so hot on the premise. But there's a compendium out of that now, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, the first couple arcs are amazing, and then the premise kind of wears a little thin.
Yeah, I mean, I've
But
got
no, but he's always been like this, and I know what you mean about the. It
I've
looks
got a couple.
realistic, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it is a comic. It's not that. It's kind of like what Alex Ross does in color. He can do in
Yeah,
black and white.
I think it's a lot, with no disrespect. I think it's a lot richer and there's a lot more nuance and subtlety than Alex Ross. I mean, Alex Ross
Yeah,
is Alex is a wonderful pin-up guy. You can't draw
yeah. I
women
don't
for
wouldn't put him on a comic. Yeah, I know what you mean. This is
he's
this is
but
a,
he's good at storytelling if he's got a strong scripter with him and stuff. That's why Marvel's works so well. I think Kingdom Come works less well as a story being told. It's much more of a sort of look at what we can drop in the background that's going to make David Steele squeal with excitement, sort of stuff. But yeah, with no disrespect to Alex at all, because he's a towering talent. I can't draw.
yeah. But there's the photorealism is tough. There are people that want it. People kind of. I have had people who love Neil Adams. I like Neil Adams. I think Neil Adams is incredibly important. I don't think his art is the style of art is groundbreaking. I don't think his art is groundbreaking. It gets us to Cockrum, it gets us to Grell, it gets us to Perez, it gets us to other people. And he needed a strong writer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive Neil fan. I think when he's with when he's working with a Denny O'Neil or a Roy Thomas,
Yeah,
phenomenal. I mean, I think the continuity stuff that I remember reading some of in the '90s is crap, But I was gutted when he died. I was very upset when he died.
yeah. I got it.
Huge fan, but
I don't want to dog him, but I just think it's. But people would use him and say that's more realistic. I had a buddy who likes Rick Buckler because he goes, that looks like a person. And Rick doesn't draw photorealist, but it was more a natural and less a cartoon style.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
is
the thing about Neil, I think, is not that he draws people that look photorealistic, but they look, and you get the sense that they're moving like real people.
They have real facial expressions. There's something going on here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, but Gene Ha's amazing. Has he done anything on Starman yet? At this point, I can't remember.
I don't remember. I don't think so.
He does a couple. He does the story with the Jester. He does the Black Canary and Ted story in one of the annuals. I'm sure he does something else, but no,
Did he do the dinner with the with all the dead superheroes that's coming up soon? The Next Time's Past.
I think I can't remember. Is that?
Well, I mean,
I think that's Tony. I think that's Tony. Talking with David.
Oh, the Next Time's Past is Starman, but there's something coming up with. Oh, yeah, there it is. Hold on, I'm sitting here with the giant compendium on my lap. Oh, it is. No. Oh, no. He comes back. It's in the annual where Jack and Sadie are having the conversation, and it's the retelling of the Brave and the Bold, Starman, Black Canary team up.
Yeah. I mean, the young romance theme, because what they did in 1997 with the annuals was they themed them all after the old anthology books. So you got one annual is maybe flagged as My Greatest Adventure or Weird Western, and Starman was flagged up as Young Romance. And it's funny actually because when Pete and I were recording today, I think this is the 17th of July we're recording. Pete and I recorded our episode on JLE 116 today, and one of the stories reprinted in JLE 116 is Brave and Bold 61, which is the first Starman and Black Canary Brave and Bold story. And we were sort of saying, if we all had unlimited money and time, Pete and I would redo that episode and get you and Kelly to do Starman and Black Canary's dialogue. Maybe that'll happen one day. A special edition.
Oh no, that'd be a blast. I do. There's some of my favorite team ups ever written. I think they're one of the first things I covered. And I had Jennifer DeRoss come on because they're Gardner Fox, and
that's right. Yeah,
they're just a stellar. And but this art, what I like is we're seeing a bit of his background, and that this is a continuity insert. This is one, and is Robinson the Ludlow family?
Yes.
His enemies, his nemesis. He has been generation after generation trying to kill him. And we're seeing that journey. So
Yeah,
ultimately, Ludlow becomes the Spider,
yeah,
who was, he's
and
not the person who made him the seventh soldier victory to replace Green Lantern. Someone else
no,
had
that
already done it, right?
Jeff does it subsequently in, I think, issue 9 of Stars and Stripe, but it's clearly inspired by what happens in the Shade
Because
miniseries.
there's
But
no mention of the seven soldiers in here, just
well,
that he's drawn to be the Spider, which is an old
yeah,
Golden Age character of DC's that they hadn't
yeah,
used.
yeah. Well, we'll get to issue 3 in a minute, obviously, but
Yeah.
issue one. Issue one, basically, it's the origin of the Shade's conflict with the Ludlow family. It starts off literally moments after what happens to the Shade to make him the Shade has sort of taken place, and they take advantage of his sort of dizzy, awkward state, and they kidnap him basically, and they
Because
plan
they're
to
going to
sort
frame him for a murder.
yeah,
He's having amnesia and they think they can manipulate him.
yeah, and they plan to use it. They've got a plan for him, but he snaps out of it and takes his turn on them. But a couple of them, a couple of younger kids get away, and that and the family, sort of the descendants, there's something about how his sister had so many children or something to try and spread the genes and all this kind of stuff, and they propagate and they go forth and multiply, to put it tactfully, and which is why the Shade keeps coming up against them over the next 100 years or so. This first issue it's really concise, it's really, really clear, it's really, really well plotted. Nowadays, even this first issue would probably be decompressed into 2 or 3 issues at least on its own. But again, this is just some of the best stuff James ever did. I think. I think some of the stuff in the Shade miniseries is even better than what he did in the main book.
You
You
know,
can
I
tell
would,
you can tell that he likes the Shade. He's inspired by the Shade, and and he likes writing them.
and I agree with you. I think this is probably one of my favorite issues I've read so far. Single issues. You could read it as a single issue. It is densely packed. There's a lot of talking, but it's got a beautiful cover. It does
Yeah,
have a beautiful cover.
yeah,
Um, I would love, I have bought all the Tony Harris JSA covers, and my comic shop's making sure I get all of them. And my wife
yeah.
said, I will buy you frames so you can frame them
Oh,
and hang them up. It's a
yeah.
good
Peter and Clive. Peter and Clive. Hi, Peter, if you're listening. Peter and Clive have been doing the same for me. Here's a funny story. I was in the shop yesterday. Clive is one of Peter's colleagues. He's an angel. He's the sweetest guy ever. But he told me that I had too much stuff in my folder, so they're upgrading me to a box.
one.
And I'm like, why? I don't have that much. I cleared it out. I cleared it out in May. All the JC miniseries are finished. There can't be anything. But Peter's got some back issues stuck by for me and some other things. So I've been upgraded to a box. I'm going to go in Sunday and see what I've got stashed and try and clear some of it out. But yeah, the Tony Harris variants are gorgeous.
Yeah, they
We're
are.
going to talk. We're going to
He's
talk a
selling
bit
them as
more.
prints.
Say again?
If you follow him on Facebook, he sells them as prints.
Yeah,
He
I
also
did.
has the wraparound omnibus covers with no
Yeah,
logo on it, but
yeah. I was really interested in I did ask it. I did comment on this page and say, "Do you do international shipping?" And Tony himself replied saying, "Yeah, so and so looks after it." But she didn't. She didn't then reply to give me any details. I would have quite liked to have got a couple of them.
yeah, I may
But
one day.
yeah,
But
exactly. See what
but I
happens.
think this issue and the family is pretty fucked up.
That's fair. That's fair.
um, but it is very Dickensian in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like the moment where this is the first. This is the first time he's used these powers, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because he doesn't really
Because
have
it's
any
it's
control over it.
it's chaotic and full of
Yeah,
rage,
yeah. And
which is
he
not
doesn't really
him
know
later.
yeah, he doesn't really know quite exactly what he's doing with them. Because it's literally, what's happened to him has literally just happened, and it's he's as much horrified by what happens as they are. One thing actually I must say is the house ads in issue 1 are tremendous. They're a nice little 1997 capsule. Birds of Prey as a series hadn't started yet, so there's a little advert for a one shot starring Dinah and Batgirl, or Oracle, I should say. There's something about John Byrne's Wonder Woman. There's something about the launch of Scare Tactics, written by Len Kaminsky. Whatever happened to him?
I've never even heard of scare tactics.
I think I've got one issue because it ties into a couple of other series. There's an advert for the Book of Fate, which was the second series, featuring the Jared Stevens version of Doctor Fate,
Right.
and an advertisement for for Challengers of the Unknown, also worked on by Len Kaminsky and
Is
Stephen Grant.
that the Loeb John one? I mean,
John Paul Leon and Sean Martinborough. I'll hold up the house ad. I'll hold up the house ad for the
so I
benefit
can
of
see it.
everybody.
I don't get the luxury of the ads because I'm. Oh, I remember that. I like the art in that a lot. I like
Yeah,
John.
yeah, really moody and very Starman-esque in a lot of his execution. Peter, again, I'm giving Peter so many shout outs today. Peter helped me complete my run of that very recently. And there's also an advert for check it out. Electro Superman.
Hey,
Hell yeah. Couldn't be more
yes, thank you.
1999.
I don't want to hear any shit about the Electric Superman. It was fucking cool.
It was brilliant. It was dope. See when he split in two, Superman Red, Superman Blue. Oh my God.
I'm so glad they're starting to reprint the Triangle era.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be right. But what I like about it, he kills everybody, and what I like is the moment where he's falling in love with one of them.
Yeah, he's kind of drawn to one of them. And obviously he takes the hat belonging to one of them. And the implication,
he takes the older brother's hat. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she begs for her life.
That's right. I'm looking at that now. What is it she says? Don't have me killed, I beg you. Don't do it. I know what man you are with such ability. I know not what man you are with such ability, but I know I can make you happy in whatever way you desire me to. I could be your servant, your slave. Please do not take my life. And then you see her getting ripped apart on the top of page 19. And it's wow. Because, he no mercy. No mercy.
No mercy. And all he does is pick up the brother's hat and walks up the door.
Yep. And then we see that a couple of the kids survived and they have they sort of, where is it? Vengeance will out, sister. Pledge it here in the grave of our father. Pledge that we will plan and quest and gird our children to do likewise. We will have this man dead if it takes our lifetimes and those of our offspring. And they pledge and they make a pact that their family will commit to killing Dickie Swift.
And I love that last page. It's him writing in his journal, and that's that detail. How do you draw
I know.
How do you draw that and be? I mean, I know Gene Ha doesn't draw a lot.
Yeah,
but
it takes some ages.
I mean, and this is 97, so I mean, they had computer drawing, but he probably wasn't doing it yet.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
I've got a book somewhere of his sort of, I think it's like a sketchbook thing of his that I got at one point in Forbidden Planet, and it's actually signed by him. It's not personally signed. I've not met him, but it's pretty cool that it's dedicated. He's done a lot of good stuff elsewhere. But the Starman DC stuff is very special just because we care about these characters. I'm sure there's something it'll linger in my head and pop back in my head at some point, but I'm sure there's something else vaguely JSA related that he worked on at one point. I think he came back for the 12-issue series as well. I'm not sure. I'll need to have a look at that. So should we go into issue 2 then?
Yeah. Let's pop up the issue. No, hold on. All right, issue 2 was published on it's cover dated May 1997, came out March 12th, 1997. Again,
1 week after my 24th birthday.
I would have been almost third. I'd be waiting on my 33rd.
Right.
Feeling old. This one is titled Rupert and Marguerite. It's 22 pages. It's by James Robinson, James H. Williams III.
Yep.
Inker is Mick Gray. Again, Christopher E. Polopoulos. Colorist is Pat Garrity.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a great horror movie kind of poster.
Yeah.
Cover.
By Tony. All the covers are by Tony. We should say that, obviously.
Yes.
And this is an interesting one to revisit because I'm a big fan of Promethea.
Yeah, you brought it up. I was going to bring that up too.
Yeah, but she worked on. Listeners, if you've never read Promethea, I would encourage you to persevere. I had another attempt at reading it through a couple of years ago, and I stalled at the point where I stalled the first time I read it, and I didn't persevere. But I remember the time, oh God, it's something like 2006 or something. It must have been now when I think about it. It was, yeah. When I did read it all the way through, and it was profound. I believe it or not, the night I read the final issue of Promethea, I had a dream about her. She was in a dream of mine, and it was a version of her completely unlike any version that had been in the strip. It was, and I woke up and I was like, wow. It was very deep. Promethea is worth your commitment, listeners, if you've never read it.
I really
And
wish they would.
astonishing.
I mean, it's been reprinted a couple times because it's done all in landscape. I would really love them to do like some sideways books of it.
Yeah. A
You
lot
know,
of it is. It's stunning. It really is. It's beautiful.
it is some
And
of the most important. I think I'm up and down with Alan Moore at different times.
sure.
We'll never doubt his greatness,
Yeah.
but that is one of his more beautiful pieces because he can be very dark and gritty and sad. He can
Yeah.
also be silly and funny. I mean, and he
Yeah.
does a good homage to the Silver Age all the time. But that book
It,
is
it's very profound. I think issue 9 has a homage cover at Sergeant Pepper's the Hearts Club Band, so that's obviously cool. But it's very profound, and as you say, it is very positive. It's ultimately very, very rewarding, and I don't want to say too much else because it's always stuck with me, and I should read it again. I think it's the sort of thing that would probably benefit me if I could reread it more often because it was a very, at the risk of over egging it, a very spiritual read. It vibed with me. It was on my wavelength.
I'm gonna have to check that out. That's the one Alan Moore thing because they just popped out omnibuses as Tom Strong and Top 10
Right.
compendium. I would love
Yeah.
for them to do Prometheum.
Tom Strong's amazing as well. That was like some of that America's Best Comic stuff was just absolutely lived up to its name. It
I
really
would, and
did.
I am not surprised that it is a book that touched your heart. It is Fawcett.
Yeah.
It feels Fawcett through
Yeah.
and through.
It's profound. It really, really is. And it's that thing, it shows you how much Alan understands superheroes and the archetypes and all that sort of stuff, but it never feels like caricatures. It's very
No,
special.
when he wants to do a parody, he did it with that 1963 comic. He can do it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And Supreme was a little. It was I love Superman, but
Mm.
I. It was definitely a lot. It was. It's kind of muddled, but it's
Yeah.
just
I
as
haven't
better as Silver Age.
I've never read Supreme. Another shout out for Peter. Peter was just talking today about a bunch of books he had to go through. He was having to go through at work that had been parachuted in from another branch, and he was saying it was some issues of Supreme in that, and some issues of 1963. And I remember the 1963 stuff coming out when I was working in a comic shop, but I wasn't an Image reader, so it all passed me by. But I know
One of
I,
the
I know
yeah.
folk that are enthusing about Supreme recently, so maybe one of these days. But let's get back to issue
Yeah,
2 of
yeah.
the Shade.
But let's get this one where we've jumped ahead. It's 1865.
Yep.
And Pierce Ludlow and his family are the main bad guys, it seems.
Yep.
And we see him being shot. His part. I don't. Is this the doctor that's with the sidekick of the other the Sherlock Holmes like character?
I'm not sure. I don't think so because that's Hamilton Drew and someone else, isn't it? And there's the talk of him getting his friend getting dragged. I can't remember what his friend's called. That's really annoying. Now this issue 2 is the romance one. I mean, it's called Heart of Darkness on the cover. This is when Shade falls in love with a woman, and it's revealed that she's a lover.
Because we see
Yeah,
1898.
Yeah, it's kind of
then 1860. We're seeing different battles.
Yeah, it's a kind of game of two halves. The first issue is all, large illustrations with long, long, long weighty text pages and sort of, as you would say, sort of cursive sort of lettering all around it, which is a bit of a chore to get through. But the second half is when he's involved with Marguerite, and that's the one I think is more interesting. The one that sort of deals with all the conflicts and stuff, that's quite interesting. But it's a bit of a dry read, to be honest. But the artwork's nice. But the second half of it's much more memorable. Because
it's a lot of we're it's an information dump to tell us how long give us a sense of the battle that he's every 10 years he has one of these fuckers find him and one shoots his friend and then shoots him and he's bleeding out the black thing and he has just enough energy to shoot off the dagger and kill the guy.
Yeah.
But then we see all these other battles and even one involving the scalp hunter.
That's right. I think so. Yeah, I'm sure there's. I can't remember if he mentions Captain X, who's a really obscure DC hero. I know that he gets mentioned by the Shade a couple of times throughout the run, but I can't remember if he gets mentioned in here or not. Let's have a look, see if I can spot that.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
it,
looking now because and then we
it,
get to the Marguerite part. We get all the way to 1931.
yeah.
And is it Paris? I guess it's Paris. But
Let's
that
have a look.
is, and that's just basically, we've seen all these different action and all this information, but this is a conversation.
Yes.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
not an action sequence.
Yeah.
I mean, it is he's already wounded, and we get their backstory and how, she doesn't want to do it, but she's a Ludlow.
Yeah. It's very moving. I mean, it's done in such a short space of time. Um,
It's like
you know,
6 pages.
yeah. When he guesses and works out, that they both lied to each other about their names and stuff like that, and the truth starts to come out, and she's she's been brought up to think of, he's been told as she's been told that he's this evil, vicious demon of a creature, but she's got to know the real him as a person and fallen in love with him, and but her sort of ties of blood are what lead her to sort of, as we say, to sort of stab him because she feels that she has to, and it's really really sad. It's a real little romantic tragedy. You can imagine it being played out sensitively on, in if there was a movie of it with no music or anything like that, just the actors and the atmosphere, it'd be really really effective. And
Yeah.
it's
And
devastating because he has, they're having this conversation, and she stabbed him and he says he'll get better regardless, and she admits that she'd have to keep trying, and he says, well, there's no other way than, and he tells her that he loves her, and then he kills her. And it's brutal, that final page of him holding her and crying. It's very rare that we see the Shade, showing such emotion.
yeah, and what he says to her right before he kills her is, I love you, Marguerite. I will always love you. Remember
Yeah,
that. And then he kills her. But
yeah,
he also gives her examples of other people, other Ludlows that
yeah,
didn't kill him. He says, Sanderson Ludlow, he killed himself rather than destroy the friendship he and I had. Could you
yeah,
stand by his example by not taking your own life, but rather than, it's, oh,
yeah.
that's her, yeah, and then her response. I wanted to ask you this because he does fall in love with her, but I've always felt that his friendship with Matt isn't just a friendship, and his
All right,
friendship with other men is not just friendship.
interesting. I've never thought about that. Especially, well, certainly not with Matt. I don't know. I can see what you mean about.
Well, I see that he's with Wild, and I think that maybe
Yeah, that's
that
you
he
know that
is not.
that's
He not. He just is. He's
yeah,
interested in interesting people.
yeah. I think that's fair. It's like it's the idea of, like, I'm going to be very very careful what I say here. He's obviously got a really good perspective in that he sees, you only live one, you've only got one life. Don't waste it. If you fancy someone, you fancy them, go for it.
Yeah.
As you know, do you say fancy people? Do you fancy people over there?
Yes, it depends on whose
Is that,
parent, where your parents are from, where your ancestors are from, yeah, or where you
do, you,
live.
do you use
Wouldn't say
that
it
word?
down south. So she was handsome.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think with someone who's lived as long as the Shade, he's bound to have dabbled a little bit more outside of the obvious sort of things, isn't he? Of course he has. I don't know if I've ever. And I'm just going to put the light on. I don't know if I've ever thought about him and Matt being a thing. I
I,
wouldn't refute it completely. I think it's possible. Could it be likely? I don't know. I have to think about that.
I
But
don't
I mean,
think
it's
it's necessary for the story, but I think I got the impression that someone else had mentioned it, that they kind of went,
right.
you could read into it. It's like reading into Claremont, Kitty and Magic like each other,
Yeah,
you know.
sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That it's been inferred. And I'm all for that kind of change of a character. If you're reading that,
yeah,
go ahead. The writer going, I'll take that. Thank you. Oh yeah.
yeah. And
But I
personally,
don't know. I just wanted to know because he doesn't get close to many people.
mm,
He's very
right.
close to, as close as he is to Jack, he's
Yeah,
closer to Matt by the end of the series.
yeah. That's fair because a lot of it is because he's over the years he has withdrawn more and more from people,
Because
and
everybody dies, isn't it? Isn't it
yeah,
kind of that thing?
yeah, exactly. And by the time he becomes friends with Jack, and I think his involvement with Jack sort of maybe encourages him to sort of enter the world again. It's interesting actually. One I was talking to someone, an old pal the other day. We're talking about the way Alan Scott is being handled at the moment, And just come back to what we're saying about the shade, and we're kind of still the jury's still out for us, and what we think about Alan Scott and the way he.
I haven't made my decision up on the series because I want to read it in its entirety again to decide if
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with them making him queer and to show what queer would be like in that era. I think the first issue really, other than there's a little too much beefcake for my taste,
yeah. I mean, I haven't
but that's what would happen.
yeah, I haven't read them
If
all
there
yet.
had been a gay superhero in
Yeah,
1939,
I think I've
Quilter
just
would
read.
have gone after.
I think I've only read issue one. I was trying to gather them all together to read them, and I can't find my copy of issue three, which I'm sure I have got
I
because
hate when that happens.
it was only a couple of weeks ago that I finally sat down and read the recent Wesley Dodds series. And oh my goodness, that was fantastic. But we'll come back to that. But the thing about Alan was just that I was reminded that when Peter and I did Green Lantern issue 61, which is probably from like what 68, 67, 68, 69 at the latest, something like that. That could be read very much. We felt at the time, or I felt at the time, it was kind of coded as if to say a lot of Alan's issues at that time were because he was a closeted gay man. There was stuff about him never having married and all this. It's what you're saying about it's there if you read it.
Well, no, and I think it's you also because to
there's hints into it, and you sort of think, right, there's room for interpretation, and it's not done in any sort of way for sensationalism or anything like that. But it's like
no, it
that
just happens. I think with Matt is because I always kind of went, how close was Scalp Hunter and the Shade?
sure,
Close were they? And it's his because his interest in Matt starts with that he is the
yeah,
reincarnation of one of the few people he ever could call friend.
yes,
So I must be friends with him. And that
yeah,
unrequited or I lost that person.
yeah, and
Would have read into it. But yeah.
that's an obvious thing that's going to make him more drawn to Matt. I mean, we've all done it. We've all liked people because they've reminded us of other people that we've known
Oh
in the
yeah.
past, made that mistake or found that or whatever. I have one friend who has a terrible habit of dating girls that look like him. I won't name him. He won't be listening, but it's a terrible narcissistic quality about him. But there you go. But such is life.
That's a weird one.
He's beautiful though. He was a beautiful kid, so it's understandable. He's probably just looking in the mirror, to be honest. Anyway, but no, that's an interesting thought. I've never really thought that too much. I mean, it's one of these things. It's one of the things that sort of annoys me about modern Doctor Who is how they've romanticized with a capital R the Doctor and made him had feelings for a lot of his companions. Because I quite like the way the Eccleston Doctor looked at it when he thought of them all as apes, and as Time Lords and as a species, because he was so long lived, he was above all that. I'm not a fan of the Doctor being romanticized because a big part of it, one thing that was done very well was when with Jodie Whittaker and Mandip with their characters of the Doctor and Yaz, was that the Doctor was kept her distance because she knew that inevitably she would lose Yaz and she would get older and all this sort of stuff. And I think there's echoes of that with the Shade to an
Yeah,
extent.
see that makes sense. And that's kind of
the relationships he has with people, I think.
yeah, because we were seeing these blips of friends of him. Like when he has a friend, there's times between it because he outlives him and he does it. And well this one ends in with him in Keystone thinking about it after the fact, or he's about to go to Keystone in 1951.
Yeah.
And the next issue is the one that you were talking about. It is issue 3, and it has
of course. There's
Jay
Captain
Garrett and the Shade.
Yeah.
Love that.
And this is another one that's just art by James Robinson and Brett Leamis. Do you want to see what does it say about issue 3 on Mike's then? What was the publication date for this one?
Let me pull that up. I'm a big Brett Blevins fan. I think he is an underrated artist, and I forgot he had done this. And it's very different than the previous 2.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it looks.
But I think it works. It has a very Carmine feel.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean. Yeah, absolutely. Because the hairstyles and the costuming and stuff, and
the way the Flash runs,
it feels very almost Silver Age in a way.
Yeah.
So
this was published on April 23rd, 1997, cover dated June 1997, And it
Right.
was Robinson, Brett Blevins as pencils and inks and colors, and Christopher, same letterer and colorist. And this one's called The Spider, which is what we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
That he takes this old silver golden age character that no one had ever used again.
Yep.
Uh,
And does amazing things that you know would feed into later stuff. Like the twist with this one, listeners, just to get to to spoilers, obviously. We find out that the Shade is not the Shade. We find out that the Spider is not a superhero. It's all he is. He's pretending to be, and he's sort of he's using it to mask his criminal activities. Jay Garrick pops up. There's references to Dr. Midnight, which is pretty cool. It's run about the stuff. I'm right in thinking this is run about the time that the superhero, the JSA, have sort of announced their retirement. So Jay is sort of stepping down, and it sort of
yeah,
felt that the Spider will take over.
yeah,
As I mentioned, yeah, there's a nice bit on one of the pages here when you hear Jay's on the news and he's saying, the Spider and I only met briefly during my time in the All-Star Squadron. However, it's still with great confidence, and there's a shot of them on television shaking hands with each other. And then, obviously, the Shade goes on to sort of spar with the Spider to the same extent. And then he sort of, he starts sort of like, figuring out that there's more to the Spider than meets the eye. One thing I like is the suggestion that the Shade was sorry, not the Shade. I keep making the same mistake. Sorry, that the Spider was operating in St. Louis. I quite like that.
I do too. I thought that jumped out at me. Okay, good. You put him in a real city, so we know where he's
Yeah,
from. But
yeah,
Keystone's supposed to be like Kansas City, and because there's Kansas
yeah,
City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas.
yeah,
So, but yeah, but he's also, when he beats up a villain, he really beats the hell out of him. He
yeah.
destroys the Fiddler's Fiddler. I don't know who the guy in the second panel in that page is, but you see the Thinker's helmet's all bashed up.
Yeah, yeah, his pals are all sort of beaten up in the background. I think he just could well just be a generic baddie. But the
Yeah.
panel, the silent panel of the Spider, using an arrow to shatter the Fiddler's bow is just tremendous.
Yeah, the art in this. Oh, you were talking about Captain X. He's on page 1.
Yeah, that's right. This one,
and he's black in my version.
It kind of reminds you. I remember when I read it the first time. It felt like a kind of spiritual sort of cousin to the Golden Age miniseries. It's sort of set in that same sort of period post the peak of the Golden Age heroes and
And
prior
isn't
to
he dodgy in that? Isn't he a bad guy in that?
he's in a couple of the crowd scenes. I don't think he's got any lines, but
Okay.
he's visible. And of course, Shade sort of does some digging and finds out that that Spider has been quite cruel in the way that he deals with some.
Oh, the guy with the hooks.
Yeah, there's one guy cut his hands off basically. And there's a nice moment when the Shade sort of is sort of thinking about getting Jay Garrick involved as well. But he sees Jay at home with Jones, who decides not to bother him. But there's also a really interesting bit with the Spider sort of talking to a female journalist who's sort of trying to dig into his background, and he's very careful about what he says to her and what he tells her. That's quite good. But of course, ultimately, it's revealed that the Spider is a Ludlow. And there's a great scene where he has the Shade unconscious and has him at his mercy. And Shade has been weakened and all this, but foolishly, the Spider has left him lying on the ground in front of a roaring fire, which obviously casts a shadow, which lets the Shade sort of recharge. And it's a brilliant page where he just sort of, because the Spider is one of these superheroes that uses a bow and arrow. I'm miming a bow and arrow for our YouTube viewers, and Shade just kind of takes him out with Shadow Force bows and arrows, and it's amazing. So much blood.
Oh yeah, this is definitely postcode, and then he saves the reporter, right?
I think it's
Joan. No, I'm forgetting. That's Joan.
Yeah, yeah, it's Joan, because Jay's there as well. Jay looking young and vital and handsome, and it's there's a nice bit when stuff about stuff on the news about the Spider being found out, and people suggest that Dr. Midnight might have been responsible for exposing it. And you see there's a nice shot of Chuck on the telly with Dr. Fate and the Ray sort of standing behind him. And maybe I can't remember who. There's a bit of Hawkman certainly as well, and that might be Red Beard Tarantula, but someone else sort of standing there, and it's all very. And then Shade has a chat with Jay, and it's all they sort of chat about what's been going on. But it's the really interesting thing about this is that are you going to be doing Stars and Stripe?
Yes.
Yeah, we want to
I have to. I mean, one, it's one of my favorite comics ever.
Yeah, yeah,
and when I run out of Will, I won't be up to Courtney's time in the JSA.
Yeah.
So I will probably replace Will with Courtney. I'm also cover. I'm thinking of how do I cover the TV series. So that's going to be a separate thing because it's got to be covered.
Yeah, that's a fair one.
Got to be.
You have to remember that Ted pops up in Fate a couple of times. Remember, I'll try and find out. I'll check and see which issues for you and let you know.
Oh, but, yeah. Because I have made a decision, and I kind of hinted when I get to Jack joining the JSA, I will start doing the JSA. Good. And when Opal City runs out, I will just change. It'll still be just JSA because I want to cover that. I don't care if anybody else has ever done it because.
Yeah, because Jack's heavily involved for the first couple of years, and it's definitely worth doing for all that because there's some brilliant stories. They stand up so well. Quarter of a century.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think most the entire John's run is spot on.
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying how bad it gets after he leaves.
Yeah,
and how quickly.
Oh yeah, you were talking about you were saying that to someone else quite recently.
Guggenheim did and I like I got no problem with his writing normally, but his is unreadable, and it's not been collected. And the last arc has never been collected.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
There's a reason, but I got to do it. But no, I'm going to do Stars and Stripes.
Good. There is
one. It's just such a great comic.
Yeah, I know. And to get back to the point, the interesting thing that it does is that it mentions the Seven Soldiers of Victory in one issue, and this was the first time anything really been done with them since the Crisis, because of course the Crisis.
Other than Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison hints that the Spider is one of the members.
Yeah, but that comes afterwards, doesn't it? Is that?
Maybe it does come after Stars and Stripes. Yeah, I think it does. You're right.
It's a few after this, and what Jeff does, Jeff and Lee do in this issue of Stars and Stripes, and it's a bit of foreshadowing. I won't go into it. It deals with the issue of what happened if there was a Seven Soldiers of Victory. What happened because there wasn't a Golden Age Green Arrow and Speedy at this point in the continuity, and they sort of suggest and postulate that. Stuff, who's the Shining Knight's pal, makes up for Roy not being there, and the Spider is there as the Archer. And there's a genius moment, real clever moment in Stars and Stripe issue 9. And I remember reading it really, really clearly, half my life ago, almost literally. The Seven Soldiers have assembled and they're talking about what's going on, and one of them makes a comment about how, we're only here because that Archer told us to be here. And someone makes a reference to an insect, and then there's a panel when you see the shaft of an arrow colliding with a post right next to Stripes' head or Justin's head, something like that, and the arrow is green. So it's this sort of tease of a green arrow, and you sort of think, right, what's happening? And then it's beautifully structured. You turn the page, and there's a double page spread where the Spider is revealed, and you think, oh, right, genius. The Spider replaced Green Arrow in the Seven Soldiers of Victory. And then the rest of the issue plays out, and it's a loose retelling of Justice League 100 to 102, which we were covering on the Earth-2 podcast a year ago. Where Ross gave us his Ted Knight to great acclaim. Yes. And we got so many other podcast people and pals and friends involved. That was the first time Logan played Speedy, and he's done Speedy for us about 6 times now. It's pretty, he just drops right back into it. It's great. And this issue kind of retells JLE 100, 102 in a post-crisis, post-Zero Hour type way. Now, they've obviously done stuff since with Courtney and all that, where they've sort of retconned it that there was a Golden Age Green Arrow and Speedy, and they were the Silver Age Green Arrow and Speedy, but sent back in time by the Clock Penguin.
I really like that in Lost Children.
Phenomenal.
I thought it was great.
I remember when that issue came out, that Spring Break special came out, 3 years ago or something now?
Yeah.
And I was reading it, I'd got it from the shop, and at this point, Forbidden Planet Glasgow was still operating 2 branches, and Peter, hello Peter, if you're listening, was operating the sort of the outlet store. And I remember going down to see him, and sitting on a stool by the door, reading this, and him laughing because my jaw was just dropping at almost every panel as I was reading it. And this all stems from everything that was done with the Spider in this issue by James Robinson, in this issue of The Shade. And it's glorious. It takes an absolute dead end of a character that no one has thought about for decades.
And he's
and makes
so important.
Absolutely fascinating and really, really interesting. And it continues, obviously, further on into the Starman series. We won't say too much more about it, but obviously bear this issue in mind, listeners, when we get to issues 60 odd and issues 70 odd.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've forgotten so much, and I've already covered 2 issues by this point, folks. Of this is going to drop probably in the next day or so, because it's hard for me to get time to record. But I've only got 2 more issues of one more issue of Infernal Devices.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because I forgot that was on 3-part, and I'm just
Yeah, because
let's cover 4, because I want to ask you about where this was placed in the compendium, and do you think it kind of fits there?
Right. Okay.
So the next one is issue 4. It is by Tony Harris cover. It's a great cover. It's just him sitting under a tree smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
With a scarecrow with a top hat.
Yeah.
And it's art by Michael Zulli, who I'm not that familiar with, and he did all the pencils, inks, and colors.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's not someone I know either.
I will say that this one takes place in 1997. I like the art, and I think it's very appropriate for every artist has fit the story.
Yes, agreed.
But the story's been crafted by the artist perfectly. And the cover date is, what was this? So 4, it was July 1977. It came out May 14th, 1997.
So May 14th, 1997, for some context, is about a week or so, week and a half, but maybe just under 2 weeks after there was a general election in Britain that year. It's about 2 weeks after that general election when Labour had got in for the first time since 1979. And this is about a week and a half after when I met Tom Baker for the first time. I'd met Tom Baker at a convention in Manchester about a week and a half before this was published. So there you go. That's what was happening with me at that point.
I would like to have met him.
You met William Russell, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Man, I never met him. I'm so
he was very sweet.
When you shared your photo the other week.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's one of my favorite pictures of me and Vic. Because we both love, when we sat and listened to him do nothing, when he got interviewed, most of the talk was about his son being in a 2-hand play with Alfred Molino in the West End and just being the proudest dad of his actor son. My son is on the West End, and it's just him and Alfred Molino on stage together.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. But this one is set in 1997. I like it. It's one of the times
just the tangent for a second. If there's any justice, Alfie Enoch will play the Doctor at some point.
I would love that.
Makes sense if you ask me.
He's a pretty good actor.
Yeah.
He was in American How to Commit a Murder, and he played Violet Davis's son.
Right. Okay. Wow. Could that be that's a great combination.
Yeah, he's really good. I mean, it's wonderful. But this one I kind of was thinking this one was going to be in the 70s when I read it. And then I went back, oh no, it's supposed to be 97. And then I went, I owned a vest in 1997.
Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be right up to date because, it's supposed to be where the Shade has been whilst Infernal Devices was taking place, isn't it?
Yeah. But this is put in play. These issues in the compendium come between Bobo's introduction and Infernal Devices Part 1.
Yeah.
Because Shade plays a big part in the story after this, where they go looking for Solomon Grundy. Yeah,
I think that's probably the best place to put it, because it would have been daft. The way Jack's storyline flows, it would have been daft to have dropped this in between chapters of Infernal Devices in the Omnibus, and it would be daft to put it after Infernal Devices
because there's no place for the Shade not to be where he's at. He's
it just
already
goes,
in.
it just flows straight into the Grundy story, and um, I think where they've placed it is the right one because you can sort, you can read it and then just be it sort of informs you as to where the shade has been whilst Infernal Devices has been taking place.
Okay.
Work, and this is quite an interesting one because am I right in remembering this is the final last surviving member of the Ludlow family and his kid and stuff, isn't it? Yeah. Is this how it ends? The final Ludlow and I wonder. I'm shivering, but it can't be. But it can't be from fear. How could I fear this man? I will go on from this. I know that. I fear because I want him to go on too. Yeah, it's when. Yeah, it's Yeah, just final conflict with Craig.
Okay. Well, I like this. This is the end of the. We think this is the end of the vendetta
Yeah,
because he
yeah,
doesn't show, and it's kind of it's degenerated to this point to where he goes to this guy's shitty little farm.
yeah.
The guy's drunk, passed out at the table,
Mm-hmm.
and when Shade just goes, Gary Ludlow, oh, you've come.
Yeah,
How did you know? Doesn't matter. No, I guess not. It's my time. I'm a Ludlow. It's my time. My time. And he screams, stands up, hits the table, and then is killed. And the Shade looks disappointed.
mm,
It's kind of like, why do I keep doing this?
yeah. Um, yeah, because she talks about. I'm hang on. I'm confused. Yeah, because he's not the guy that he then goes on to have the conversation with, obviously. Um,
So is that wait a minute? So I'm confused. Is he? Oh, they're brothers. He kills one brother, and then he's
yeah,
at the home of the other brother. That's where.
some, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a nicer farm. It's like
Hmm.
in a different place. It kind of confused me then, and it's looking now that I'm looking back at
Yeah,
it, it confused me again. But she knows who he is, and
yeah,
she begs him
because he's
not to
got
do
yeah,
anything.
top of page 13 when the lads got the line. My brother for one, he's crazy with hate. It's like there's something born within us, like swallows knowing to fly south. With us, we're born knowing to hate you. And then and Craig works out that Shade has killed Gary. That's right. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's and it you and then they just sit down and chat and talk about it, and it's not what you're expecting, and I think in a way with the last issue you expect to be some sort of climatic battle, maybe where Shade comes up against like half a dozen members of the family or something, and then but it's very low, it's very 90s because it's beautiful artwork and it's a long rambling conversation and it's very James, but it doesn't feel like it's overwritten. It doesn't feel pretentious.
No,
It goes
it's a
very
real.
natural.
These are real conversations. That's why I think I love this book. So is I don't mind a wordy comic as long as it's dialogue and necessary exposition. But
Yes.
this one is just a nice. I mean, it's like the one with Marguerite. It's just 6 pages of a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's left a little ambiguous at first, and then the series finishes with the Shade sort of thinking that he's on good terms with this guy, but he doesn't know that further down the line that maybe another member of the family spawned from Craig or whatever might come after him. Sorry.
Yeah, but down the line there's going to be another one. I did not read all the Shade text stuff this time through. Uh,
Right.
what I don't like about the compendium is it doesn't have all of this stuff.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
missing some that were in
Yeah.
the compendiums. I'm
I mean,
in
I've I,
this.
I think I've only got I don't have volume one in the compendium yet. I've got volume two because it was on sale. Um, I'll get to volume one eventually, I'm sure. Well, I want to quickly mention another house ad in this issue. An advertisement for the crossover Convergence, going between the Book of Fate issue 6, Night Force issue 8, Challenges of the Unknown issue 6, and Scare Tactics issue 8. So there you go. There's also another advertisement for the Kents series, the one that John Ostrander and Tim Truman did, and there are some there's an advert for some one shots that DC were putting out to tie in with the Batman and Robin movie for Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy. So that's quite a nice little timestamp.
Oh yeah, that's a good. What was it?
Advert for the Kent's Maxi series. One shots with Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy to tie in with the Batman and Robin movie, and for Convergence, which was kind of between the kind of like, I suppose, the horror superhero sort of comics type thing. I have the 4 issues that are required, but I've never read them. Of course, I haven't. But it's an interesting issue. It's a nice sort of gentle sort of feel to it, and it's as deep, and the artwork's, there's that one panel, I think it's at page, let's have a look, page 20, when the sort of sun is setting and you see the scarecrow in the field, and it's lovely. You can almost hear it. It's a beautiful page.
I need to read all those things, and I'll probably reread this. I keep wanting to kind of go back and sometimes when I get, like, if I pause recording or a podcast because just life get in the way, I'll go back and reread it. For this recording, I read them really quickly. They're really dense. They're really dense.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reading in this one, but I loved it when I read it. I read in one sitting. The first time I reread it, like about weeks ago.
Excuse me. I can remember. I can remember once I had issues 1, 3, and 4, and I'd flicked through the Jay Garrick issue. When I got issue 2 at the Comic Mart, I was delighted because it meant I could read the whole thing. And I remember I would have read it on one go, I'm sure. I probably would have sat up late till 2 o'clock one morning reading it all. And it's from rereading it quickly and sort of prep before talking to you, it's really obvious to me that I reread it a lot. A lot of it was very familiar. So I would have read it a good few times round about then because it was just so good. And issue 3 is a fever dream for someone like me that loves the Golden Age heroes and loves them being used well, with imagination.
Yeah. I'm glad they had Brett Blevins do it. I mean, he wouldn't have been someone I would have thought of.
What else is he? Oh, sorry.
He did some X-Men, and he was the penciler for Louise Simonson's Superman stuff.
Oh, okay.
Him and Bognovic.
Of course, right.
I think either Bognovic replaced him or he replaced Bognovic.
Right, that makes sense. Right, okay. Because I think at this point John was probably still drawing it. I'm not sure. Because remember, Man of Steel always seemed to be kind of separate from the others. It would tie in, but it was always stylish.
It's not. I think he draws it during the triangle. So at some point during the triangle era for a little bit.
That rings a bell vaguely.
Yeah. But no, it's wonder. It's the most cartoony.
Sure.
It's the most comic book like, the most 4-colorish.
Yeah.
Because they all have a different color palette.
Yeah.
The first one's black and white and red and yellow and some very little flesh tone. Marguerite is earth tones.
Yeah. In this era, Action Comics is probably the straightest, most down the line, almost kind of like, almost like a police procedural comic in a lot of ways. And then Adventure, because I think Tom Grummett's probably still on it around about this time. Adventure's a bit more out there, and Superman is the most soap opera type sort of one. They were all. You could read them all each week as they come out, and you got
the Ordway was more street level.
They were all distinct enough at the time, and that was the good thing about the Triangle era. I think
I think the Triangle era is one of the best eras of any comic. It's a decade.
Yeah, a long time. I agree with you completely.
I mean,
it's very weird.
Who would have thought of putting Bognovi on Superman?
Say again, sorry?
That Bognovi Superman, who is just this big, barrel-chested, like wrestler guy, like Schuster drew him, but even like on roids. And it's gorgeous. And Louise and the writers, I like Byrne's Superman. It's not great. That series gets great when he leaves. Mm. And it's Marv and Roger and Dan and Louise and all those people.
I like what Byrne did to an extent, but one of the things I had it pointed out, like a lot of Byrne stuff at that era in the mid-80s, you get a lot of stuff, then you get 2 pages of Head and Shoulders exposition at the end of an issue, and that happens a lot.
I think some of his, because I've got those 4 hardcovers, and I read the first volume straight through, and I went, I really like it, but I'm waiting for this to become more serialized. I want the triangle stuff, or at least near the triangle stuff.
Yeah.
because
yeah,
the books I like better
yeah,
are the Wolfman
yeah.
Ordway
It's
one.
around about. It's probably around about issue 30 of Superman. Once Action Comics Weekly's buggered off, that it really sort of starts kicking in again, isn't it?
Right after
Yeah,
right around the Red Crisis, the Crimson
Crisis
Crisis.
Kryptonite. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Because
it's so
Jerry
good.
still he still works on it for quite a long time. I can call him Jerry because he follows me back on Twitter. He's a pal, obviously.
He's commented on some of my posts when I've said something about his art.
I,
He is
yeah,
probably one of I
Jerry's
think he's one of my he's probably in my type five artists.
yeah, Jerry's brilliant.
And just
Jerry's criminal how little sort of acclaim or attention or even work that he gets nowadays. It was farcical that DC published a Shazam ongoing and he didn't draw a single cover for it. It's just
I
nonsense.
don't know what's going on. I think they just don't. They're whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm going to Baltimore Comic Con hopefully in September, and Joe Staten's going to be there.
Oh, cool,
Yeah,
nice.
it's a purely a comic book convention. There's no sci-fi, nothing. It's just all
Really?
comics, and
Oh, I'd love.
everybody comes. There'll be a bunch of people there. So
Yeah,
Toby
that'd
and
be
me
great.
are going to meet up, and maybe Jimbo.
Cool.
So overall, I love this mini. So I want to ask you something. We talked about it. I think you're right. I think it fits perfectly where there I had it. I mean, that's when I read it the first time,
Yeah,
and I was in between Bobo's introduction, which is so good, and then Infernal Devices. Man, this Black Pirate stuff.
yeah,
God, how good it was. And now having read some of those real Black Pirate comics, I'm like, wow.
yeah. I was really been enjoying what you've been saying about them because I think I've got. Is it the Bureau of Missing Heroes or something like that? I've got at least one or two 52-page issues that reprint some Black Pirate stories. And he's in a couple of. I'm sure he's in at least one of the Action Comics 100 pages. So I'm gonna dig them out to read those stories that I've got to hand
Yeah.
because
It's
I'm glad that you decided to do that because
I just thought I had to do it.
oh,
I just
yeah, genius. Because I was walking to, when was it last week? I was working at a music festival last weekend, but last week I had to walk down to get my accreditation and my wristband pass and all that sorted out. And I was listening to whichever episode of Opal City was out last week, the most recent one at that point. And I was going, yeah, I was really glad that you were doing the Black Pirate stuff. And I thought, this is interesting. This is making me want to dig them out and read some of these because he's completely overlooked and forgotten, I think, isn't he?
and it's so different. I mean, it's
Yeah,
straight up news.
yeah,
It's straight up Alex Raymond. It's
yeah,
straight up Hal
yeah,
Foster. It's
yeah,
Sheldon Maldorf. It's I was in Velocity Comics picking up my books. Tanner works who I see on the weekends. He works for Pat.
yeah,
Shout out to them. We
yeah,
were talking about he was like, who is the artist that did the early Hawkman and went Kubrick in the All Star. He goes, no, because we were talking about Golden Age art. And then I went, oh no. He goes, no, it's not Kubrick. Oh, it's Moldov.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I forgot how good Sheldon Maldorf is when he's
Yeah,
doing an action strip.
yeah.
When he
I mean,
thinks,
I'm not big on Hawkman. Peter, again, hi Peter, if you're listening. We were talking about Hawkman today because we recorded a Hawkman adjacent story for Earth-2. And I was sort of saying like Hawkman's a character, he's always appealed to me visually, but I've never read a lot of these. I've never been grabbed enough by him to read a lot of stuff. But the Golden Age stuff that I have read is next level. It's gorgeous compared to some of the cartoony kitchen scratchings, chicken scratchings that some of the characters like the Atom have to put up with. The Hawkman artwork is amazing.
yeah, it is. It's kind of like it's like the Starman arts like that,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. But the pirate, that second one I did, the one that's in Sensation Comics #1,
Yes.
moves from adventure to that
Yeah.
action to that is the first one was amazing,
Uh-huh.
but he's progressed as an artist, and it's just
Well, see, that's one I'll be able to read because I think I've got the Millennium edition of that. I might even have the tabloid. Sure. But I'll have the Millennium edition, so that's one I'll be able to read.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really good. It's
Yeah.
my brother posted something on because I posted on Facebook, and he posted there is a Douglas Fairbanks Sr. movie called The Black Pirate, and the Black Pirate in that comic is drawn to look more like what if Errol Flynn and Fairbanks Sr. had
Right.
a child. It's very much he took a picture of them. It's Fairbanks. It's definitely
And
Fairbanks, and it's perfect. That made me want to go find that movie and watch it, and maybe
yeah,
for the
it's kind
podcast
of look
because
back at when you look back at the DC Robin Hood book, I think they took over from Quality. I said, how Scottish did I sound there? The way I said that, Quality. Yeah, and even there's some issues of DC Special from the 70s that have Robin Hood in them, and that's Errol Flynn. There's no two ways about it.
Oh yeah, you're gonna draw it, you know,
Obvious that's what they're doing, and um,
because that's who
you know,
everybody thinks of. I mean, even
yeah,
today, I think of that. I don't think of Kevin Costner or God, Russell was it Russell Crowe in that horrible one?
yeah, I didn't see that. At least I don't think I did. Did I? I can't remember. No, wait a minute. Did I? I think I did.
And there was another one recently was just as shitty with the dude from the gentleman and that biker TV show, who I like.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, I think
all
I know
right,
what you
so
mean.
hey, let's move on. There's a discussion we want to talk about, and there are rumors flying.
Yes.
And Tony Harris has posted on beside him, Wayne Von Grawbadger
Mm,
and James Robinson and Tony's wife sitting down to dinner to plan a new project.
yeah.
And so he got a little peeved at somebody for saying for sure what it was.
Yeah, because what happened was Bleeding Cool ran a story, I
Okay.
think about a week and a half ago, and we all shared it because it said that Tony and James are doing something new. And Tony has a Facebook page where he private Facebook group where he posts artwork and stuff, and the group is called Tony Harris Artwork, etc. No
Yeah.
sharing, and it looks as though some people have broken his trust on that and posted
Yeah, because
stuff.
I barely even post on it because I just want to
Yeah,
like I like things and I
yeah,
don't,
yeah,
because he is giving us a glimpse at stuff.
mm-hmm.
And I've not brought
Yeah,
it up on that other than he shared the photo of them together
yeah,
and something's going
yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And I
I
know
mean,
what I think it is.
there's been hints about it, and obviously we're anticipating that it's going to be the long rumored, long wished for story about Jack going to Japan.
Yeah. But it's the guy, Pat, who owns Velocity, and me, we're talking about it. And I agree in this. There should be this year of all years,
30 years.
something
Yeah,
Jack.
yeah.
It is the
Because
30th anniversary of Zero Hour. It's the
yeah,
30th anniversary of his creation. And this series is an incredibly important comic book.
it really is.
It
And
has fans, and the other people who don't know it or don't like it just don't know it because it was
yeah,
limited and it came and went over a 7-year period, 8-year
yeah.
period,
Mm-hmm.
and it's finite. And I did they just because they've not seen him, and I like that the only glimpse we've seen in the New Justice Society is that he's living with his kid and leaving the fuck alone.
Yeah, and we talked about that before. It was just amazing to see him. I think prior to that, I think the last time I remember seeing him in anything was he was at Sue Dibney's funeral in Identity Crisis. And I think he was on the cover, one Alex Ross cover of a JSA run about 2009, I think, just in the background. But it's interesting. I mean, as you say, 30th anniversary of Zero Hour. We know that there's a Zero Hour 30th anniversary special coming out, which has a version of Jack, a version of the Ray, a version of Wonder Woman. I think a version of Batgirl on the cover. So there's going to be, we'll see something involving
Good.
Jack to some extent this year. But I'm San Diego. Am I right in thinking? I think it's next weekend. It's
Yeah.
not this
Next week.
weekend. So probably, all being well, next weekend, a week and a half away from when we're recording, we'll hear what it is.
Yeah, and I don't care what it is. If it's
Yeah,
not even Jack, if it's just a story set in Opal City with a new hero or something, just them together.
I think it will be because remember there was I think an interview with Tony and James in Back Issue magazine
Yeah,
a
yeah,
year or
yeah.
two, and they said they tried to interest people at DC, but they sort of said no, there's no interest. We don't think there's any interest in it. And I've got friends that work in comic stores, that friends in high places have told me so many things over the years about ideas that people had for stories, which we knew would be guaranteed sellers, but someone at DC didn't think they would work. I mean, DC, I think, is in a much better place now than it was 10 years ago. Mark Waid's there for a start. That just makes so much
Yeah,
of
and
a
they
difference.
just announced he's doing a Batman and Robin Year One series
Yeah,
with Chris Samey.
yeah, I know. And that's going to be, I just saw about that today. Yeah, that's going to be beautiful. The Titans thing he's been doing is great. World's Finest has been great.
I got to
Um,
read the Titan stuff. I got to read all the Titan stuff.
yeah.
Oh, what
I
the
mean,
World's
it
Finest
was,
Titan one? Yeah, I bought that. I bought it in the hardback too because that will be reread time and time
yeah,
again.
yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, I'm aware what this sounds like when I say this, but it's the sort of DC stuff I want to read. Should they be targeting them at 51-year-old men? I don't know. But they're also doing a lot of stuff that is targeted towards a younger crowd. I'm told anecdotally that, the new Pride one shot sold out twice in my local shop. That they're doing a lot of stuff that that young people are interested
Yeah,
in.
and I get it, and I think that's. I mean, and they use Michael in it. That's what
Yeah,
I. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
they used Michael, and
Do
it
you know
was
what?
a
I didn't pick it
very
up here, and I didn't know Michael was in it until you did your episode, and now I can't find
the
it because
first
everybody.
damn story in the book.
So I'm going to have to try and get one off eBay, I think, because I haven't read. I'm not going to listen to your episode until I read it. But
It's
I have.
very,
It is.
it is a, and I mean this as a descriptor, meaning the creator. It's it's a very clear comic in a good way. Like
Yeah,
this is it is written. The whole book is some of it doesn't speak to me because it's for younger people who are
sure,
little. You know, I worked for a gay theater company for years, so I know it hints on a certain subculture.
sure.
Yeah, but it's a good story. It's beautifully drawn.
Yeah,
Um,
I had no
and it was
idea
and the whole special looked good. There was stuff
yeah,
that talked to me, and some of it that didn't, just
yeah.
because.
It's always the way with these big anthology style books. If I'd known Mikey was in it, I would have snapped it up. I'm a bit annoyed that no one told me, or I didn't
Well,
know.
okay, yeah,
It's like
it's really good. He is.
until
This
you
is the
release your
queerest I've
episode,
seen
that
him.
sold out. Say again.
This is the queerest I've seen him.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'll
Um,
try and track one down because I always feel if there's a character from a series that I'm fond of, I'll always buy anything they're in to support them.
yeah. Oh, I
You
didn't
know.
know he was in it, and that's kind of I saw that someone had posted something about it. And went, oh, I found it. It was already on the app because I had the
Right.
intro, and I just read it and covered. I had to.
Got you.
How are you liking Michael in Danger Street? Because you started to read Danger Street.
Yeah, I start reading Danger Street. I'm only up to issue 5. Yeah, it seems okay. It's interesting. I've seen it, Ross, before we started. There's a sort of Coen Brothers vibe to it that Michael and Travis and Rex, Metamorpho have all got a plan to try and get back in with the Justice League by using Dr. Fate's helmet to capture Darkseid, but they muck it up and kill one of the dingbats in Danger Street. You couldn't
And
make it up.
Atlas. And so there's no one holding up the world anymore.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm up to issue 5. I will persevere with it. I will not let it fall by the wayside. I'm not working over the weekend, so I'll try and read a lot of it then.
I think it's fun. Each issue is very different. I like, and even though
Yeah.
that each title is the name of the character was in that
Yeah.
number, it's not always centric about that. I like
course.
Jack Ryder in this.
Yes, very much
Really,
so.
and I love Lady Cop.
Yeah, the Lady
Love
Cop
her.
issue special is phenomenal for its time. We on Earth 2, Peter and I are doing. We're going to do the issues, the obvious 3 issues. We're doing the Doctor Fate one, the Manhunter one, and the Starman one. But Peter, being Peter, hi Peter, if you're listening, has worked up a plan because we sometimes on our show we do, if there's legacy characters involved, we like to do sort of little portmanteau episodes that kind of build up to them. So we did one a few years ago where we did character names. We did an episode before the Crime Syndicate turning up where we did stories that featured other heroes with the same names as the member of the Crime Syndicate. The most famous one being obviously when Robin becomes Owlman. Before we did Seven Soldiers of Victory, we did stories where characters met other heroes with those names. Like there's a Sandman story where he meets someone called Wing, that sort of thing. And Peter, bless him, has been doing some amazing sort of digging about because we're going to do an episode. We're going to do probably 2 or 3 episodes actually, sort of which Peter's going to call the Road to First Issue Special, where we're going to try and we've sort of set ourselves the task of trying to find like legacy stories for every single character that gets featured in First Issue Special. And
I think Green Team. You're all.
listen, tell you, Peter is like.
Did he find another Green Team?
He's found I don't think he's found a Green Team, but I'm not going to spoil it. He found something. The comic mart we worked together a few weeks ago. He found something then in an issue of Gangbusters, which just made both of our jaws just hit the floor. And he's found something to tie into the New Gods. There are kind of prototype Metamorpho stories that we've found. He's found something for one of the New Gods characters, which I can't wrap my head around at all. So they'll be coming along, and probably quite soon after we do the Seven Soldiers stories in Adventure Comics. They'll be happening before too long.
Oh, I'm excited about that because I enjoyed reading those first issue special comics again too, even when they were bad.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing.
Some of
I've
them are
read,
fucking terrible.
I read a few of them, but I when you were doing it, when you were covering them, I deliberately didn't listen to your episodes because I hadn't read Danger Street yet.
Yeah.
So I will go back and listen to all of them, once I've read Danger Street. So you'll see your download figures spiking slightly that day.
That's cool.
As I go in and download them all and go for a long walk.
Um,
Um, so that'll be good. But yeah, we've lots of other good stuff coming up. Obviously,
yeah,
always
San
the
Diego's going to be a big. I'm looking forward to see what DC says. Not
yeah
as much with Marvel right now.
yeah it'll be
Um,
San Diego's
I don't know what to think of this absolute sideline. They're going to do an alternate universe. I saw the first
yeah.
part. I'm like,
I saw,
yeah,
I saw a promo image today where like Superman looks like a dick. Quite frankly, Batman looks.
I'm not the biggest not Scott Snyder fan, so
We'll see.
we'll
As
see.
I always say, we'll see
Well,
what
they said they're
happens.
going to run side by side. I say you don't mess with Green Arrow. It's going, but I think Williamson's leaving,
Right. Okay.
which is sad because
Yeah.
Green Arrow's been a great book.
Yeah, you and Peter both been reading about it. I'd the first half a dozen issues went into my standing order, but the rest of them haven't. I only noticed after quite a while had passed. I'll maybe just get trades for those to read them because I know you've been enthusing about it.
I think it's just because it's just superhero fun and it's a good superhero family. It's kind of like reading Wade or John's Flash, where it's about all of them,
Perfect.
which is what I like. Well, hey,
Yeah,
David, let's kind of wrap this up. I love it. Thanks for coming
absolutely.
on and talking in the shade.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. We won't. Hopefully, it won't be so long before we,
No,
we do
no,
the next.
there's a Times Pass coming up soon.
Yeah.
It's a Will
So,
Payton one too, in the black and red Will Payton. And I'm
oh
taking a
yeah,
break
of
from
course, that
Will.
one.
Huh?
Yeah, that's good. That'll let me talk about Will a bit more. Yeah, because there's that one, and then there's the next Talking with David, which is
The,
legendary.
the
Absolutely,
with the dinner with all the superheroes and the red beat.
that one's going to be. Oof.
Yeah.
That'll be a long one, folks.
I
This
think
has
I'm
been
gonna
a
have
long.
to find a red beat comic to cover.
Oh, that's a good shout. Yeah,
He should
interesting.
get it. He should get it.
Yeah.
He should get it. I like that they gave him one of the sidekicks in Lost Children.
Yes,
I thought
yes,
that was, and that she's the ladybug. I think that's
that was
just
lovely.
incredibly good. So,
Yeah,
all
such
right.
a good.
Well,
Right. Thank you for having me, my friend. It's been a pleasure.
all right. And folks, listen to Earth-2 Podast. I listened to the latest episode, most of it this morning. No, I finished it. I worked from
Do you know
home.
what, listener? Sometimes Ross has even listened to it before I've heard them.
It's put it this way, David. I get up at first thing in the morning on Thursdays. I go into the
Yeah.
bathroom, turn my phone, and start hitting. And I don't even finish the podcast I was listening to. I start listening to you, and on Fridays I listen to Untitled Star Trek.
I think it was last week or the week before, and you'd shared it to your Instagram story, and I was like, "Fuck, I've not even heard it yet."
Because I'm doing it on the bus. By the time I get on the bus, I've listened to the whole thing. So
Brilliant.
and then Friday mornings is Untitled Star Trek. So
Right.
that's what I go
Yeah.
to, and then I jump around.
Awesome.
I've been listening to a lot of Flight Through Entirety covering Matt Smith.
Right. My Friday mornings are Brandon Peters. Brandon's doing some brilliant stuff. He's doing his usual sort of summer walk through the movies and pop culture stuff of a year gone by. This year he's doing 2004. So it's not quite as entertaining as when he did 1982 and 1993, but it's still interesting because I'd seen a lot more of the films in the cinema. So it's interesting from that point of view. It's not quite as much fun. There's not quite as much archaeology, but it's still really, really good.
I need to jump in and listen to that. I'm going to need a new podcast. I go.
Yeah.
But as always,
Definitely.
folks, be safe, be
Yeah.
smart. Please be kind to one another. It's especially in America. It's election time, and this one's going to be ugly. And read some comics.